by the seller. Now this buyer assigns this contract to another buyer before closing. Got the picture? This buyer has a signed contract with the seller. He now assigns this contract to another buyer before closing. This second buyer closes with the seller. So where does the realtor who had the first buyer stand as to commission? You're right, nowhere, because his buyer never closed. So watch it if your buyer ever assigns their contract. Procuring cause. Actually a will of the wisp to explain. If you ask 10 realtors, you'll get 10 different explanations as to what is procuring cause. I like to go to the manual, which says, the uninterrupted series of causal events which results in the successful transaction. Or as some real estate attorneys have finessed it a little more, the direct origination of a series of events which, if followed through without a break in continuity, result in a sale or lease upon terms acceptable to the seller. By the way, this definition that we use was taken from Black's Law Dictionary, which is a fantastic book you should have in your office. I read about 10 minutes of it every day, which shows you what kind of a life I have. The series of events starts off with showing the property. The series of events is actually everything you go through when you're actually selling a piece of property. Showing the property has to, now you could probably legally and ethically prove that you were the procuring cause if you didn't show the property. But you have to remember, in an arbitration, you're appearing before a panel of working realtors, and you're trying to prove that you are the procuring cause, and one of them is going to ask you, did you show the property? And you say no, you've got 10 strikes against you right then and there. So if a purchaser comes to you for some good reason, having worked with one realtor, and comes to you for a good reason to have you conclude the transaction, say, come on, I'm going to show you the property. And say, I've seen the property a million times. Humor me, pamper me. Let me show you the property, because you're definitely going to be involved in an arbitration. Show the property. Now, the series of events which follow without a break in continuity. Direct origination seems to apply something that you did intentionally. How about you're holding an open house? You don't even put an ad in the paper, you just have some signs directing you to the open house. Would that be a direct origination? I guess it would be. The reason I bring up open houses is because I'd say about 30 or 40% of our arbitrations are a result of open houses. A would-be buyer comes to your open house, you show them the property, and they leave. And they go probably to another broker, realtor with whom they've been working, and that other realtor makes the transaction. So you think you've got a chance, and you go to arbitration. You want both ends of the property. Now, sure, I'm not trying to discourage you from going after the listing commission and the selling commission if you think you're entitled to that selling commission, but most of the times you're not. So it's good news and bad news. Good news is you've got the listing commission. Bad news is you did not get the selling commission. What's the original good news, bad news? The housewife takes the new car out for a drive, comes back, and the husband says, how did it go? She says, I've got good news and bad news for you. He says, what's the good news? She says, the airbags work. Well, let's not use that one again, huh? I want to talk about threshold theory, and I think if you have the handout, this is item 2 on my handout, threshold theory and contract theory. And that's the way realtors used to work. We used to have about 10 boards in one city or one county, and one board would work under the threshold, the threshold theory, meaning who showed the property? You showed the property, we don't care who wrote the contract, you're the procuring cause. Another board would work under the contract theory. Who wrote the contract? We don't care who showed the property first. You wrote the contract, you're the procuring cause. And that's why NAR got into the picture, because this was all wrong. Item 3 on that handout I have, he says, no single event automatically makes a salesperson the procuring cause of a sale. No single event, and that's quite logical. Why should you be considered the procuring cause if all you did was show the property? Or why should you be considered the procuring cause if all you did to write the contract? Logical. But the world isn't logical. I had an old professor who once said, if the world was logical, men would ride side saddle instead of women. That's kind of an e-joke, takes a little time to download there. I want to talk about abandonment. Abandonment, okay? Now, you could be abandoning a seller if they've got their house listed with you and it's not showing and you don't call them up at least once a week to hold their hand. Yeah, that's abandonment. But of course, we're more interested in abandonment of a buyer, abandonment. You've got to bond yourself so tightly with that buyer that they wouldn't ever think of leaving you. My first instructor said, if you break bread with that buyer, they'll never leave you. I tried it for a whole year. If I took someone out in the morning, I took them to lunch. If I took someone out in the afternoon, I took them to dinner. Husband and wife, I took my wife with me all the time. Never lost a purchaser. My wife gained 60 pounds, but I never lost a purchaser. Bond yourself. I have to mention this because Carolyn mentioned that I was once in radio a long time ago, and that's another one-on-one profession. We're a one-on-one profession. We work one-on-one with the seller, we work one-on-one with the buyer. The good radio personality always had to imagine, to forget that he was talking to thousands of people and had to think he was talking to just one person. And that was my downfall. When the ratings came out, they found I actually was talking to just one person. My mother was a very good listener. Abandonment, a little more about abandonment. Abandonment is a relative term. If you ask a realtor, they'll probably say, well, if you don't call your buyer up for 3 or 4 weeks, that's abandonment. No. How about the couple who comes into town and says, we have just Saturday and Sunday to look at property, and you show property Saturday and you don't take them out Sunday? Yeah, that's abandonment. As I say, abandonment is a relative term. Time is a relative word. This poor man is appealing to the Lord for some help, and the Lord says, $1 million to me is like a penny. Just like $1 million, that's like 1,000,000 years is like a second. This poor man says, could I have that $1 million? Lord says, sure, just a second. I think if I told that right, it would have been funny. A purchaser sees a property, now a true estrangement and true alienation. Purchaser sees a property with a listing agent, leaves that agent and goes to another agent, another realtor to consummate the transaction. There's an arbitration. At the arbitration, the purchaser is asked, why did you leave that first realtor and go to the second realtor? And the purchaser says, I was alienated. I was estranged. Probably didn't even know the meaning of the word. But what I'm getting at, yeah, you can coach your purchaser at an arbitration. I mean, don't get them to suborn or perjure, but you can tell them, hey, this is what's going to happen. They're going to ask you questions. Just tell the truth. That's what I mean by telling your purchaser what's going to happen and coaching your purchaser. Now, had this purchaser gone on to say, well, when he asked the reason, why did you leave? He says, well, that buyer, why were you estranged? That realtor had a Democratic sticker on his bumper, and I'm a Republican. That's not the kind of alienation we're looking for. Had this buyer gone on to say, however, I asked that realtor 1,000,000 questions about the property he was showing me. I said, what's that vacant lot alongside? I don't know. What's the zoning of that big property across the street? I don't know. Yeah, that's alienation, estrangement. Probably had a good right to go to a second broker. By the way, if a purchaser does come to you, the second broker, and comes to you for a good reason, either alienation, abandonment, or whatever, do you have to call that first realtor up and tell him, hey, I've got this buyer here that says he was working with you? No way. Your job is to sell the property. What if you do call that first realtor up and tell him, what's that first realtor going to do? He's going to call that buyer and say, what are you doing to me? And that buyer's going to say, the heck with both of you, and go on to a third realtor. No, your job is to sell the property. If that first realtor has a beef, yeah, they'll take you to arbitration or something, but sell the property. Now, most realtors realize that if all they did was write the offer, they're probably not the procuring cause. But too many realtors still believe that if they showed the property first, they are the procuring cause. Now, most state real estate commissions write something about it. I want to quote to you what my Florida Real Estate Commission writes about showing the property first. And most real estate commissions in various states have about the same ruling. The mere fact that the broker first approached the customer or first showed the property does not entitle the broker to a commission if another broker was the procuring cause of the final sale. And they go on to say, the fact that one broker showed the property first does not determine the right to compensation. Thus, in a commission dispute, the broker cannot merely show that he or she showed the property first. The broker must establish that his or her efforts led directly to the closing of the transaction. Now, if you ever think you're going to be involved in an arbitration, start a paper trail. Write everything down, because when you come to that arbitration, that's most impressive. Of course, you have to have the facts on your side, but the fact that you are able to do it with all the facts written down in front of you is going to score a lot of points with that panel, that arbitration panel. Most states' real estate commissions tell you you have to keep your written transactions in writing for a certain number of years. Here in Florida, for instance, they say in writing. You must keep all transactions in writing for 5 years. I told my secretary to destroy everything that was more than 5 years old. She said, okay, first I'll make copies. Now, I've mentioned abandonment and alienation. How about intrusion? Lady goes to a party, is talking to a gentleman there and says, I've seen a piece of property today with a realtor. I like that property. I like that realtor. And I'm going to have that realtor write an offer. And this person says, you can't do that. You're my mother. That's where intrusion usually comes in. Buyer meets a realtor after seeing the property, tells this realtor about this, and this realtor says, hey, I've got a license. I can write the contract for you. That's out and out intrusion. Whenever someone like that comes up before me in an arbitration, I always like to ask them, where were you all the time your relative was looking for property? Why weren't you showing them property? Get some kind of an answer. Have a hypothetical situation here for you, procuring cause. Buyer broker X arranges to show a property through the listing office. He does in fact show the same property to his same purchaser several times. His purchaser can't make up their mind about this one property, making all the appointments through the listing office. Now, buyer broker X then discovers that the listing on this property had expired 1 week before he made his first appointment with that so-called listing office. You have the picture? Thank you, okay. So he gets an offer from his buyer, brings it directly to the seller willingly signs it, giving him 100% of the commission. It closes. This so-called listing office then finds out about it and asks for an arbitration. Why? They say, well, you made all your appointments through us. You perceptively accepted us as the listing broker. We think we're entitled to the listing commission. What do you think? Are they? Very good, they're not. That's the hardest thing in the world, by the way, for someone to say, I no longer have the listing. Can't get it out right. But to be honest, you've got to be able to do that and say it. Now, of course, there is such a thing as an implied listing. Let's say your listing has expired. The seller says, I don't want to sign any more papers, but I tell you what, you may keep your sign in front of my house, and you may make all the appointments to show my property. Yeah, then you've got what is known as an implied listing. But let's say you think you have an implied listing. What recourse do you have? Can you go to arbitration? You have to go to court, right? We only arbitrate procuring cause. We don't arbitrate listings. So watch out when something like that happens to you, okay? Now, I want to point out that when you do lose that listing, you lose everything. Hypothetical situation. Someone comes to you with another realtor comes to you with an offer on your listing. You meet at your seller's home. Your seller counteroffers. The cooperating broker says it's quite late at night and I won't be able to reach my buyer until tomorrow morning. At 12 midnight, your listing expires. At 12:01, there's another realtor lurking in the master bedroom, comes out from under the bed and signs your seller to a brand new listing agreement. The next day, this cooperating broker comes back with a counteroffer from his buyer. To whom does he present that counteroffer? To you who had the listing, or to the realtor who now has the listing? Can't wait for you. Realtor who now has the listing. Of course, that's an extreme example. If that ever happened to you, you'd say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, give me an extension for 4 or 5 days until we settle this one buyer. But otherwise, you've lost it all. Item 5, if you have that handout, the magic phrase, are you working with another realtor? In fact, this is a fairly new standard of practice, 16-13, which states, realtor shall ask prospects whether they are a party to any exclusive representation agreement. It's in the Code of Ethics now that you've got to ask if they are a party to any exclusive representation agreement. But I don't care whether it's exclusive or not, you should be asking your buyer, are you working with another realtor? It will save you a lot of heartache and spinning of wheels. So let's say you do ask, are you working with another realtor? And the purchaser says, well, yeah, my cousin has a license, and my cousin has taken me out a couple of times. I wouldn't stop there. I'd say, okay, but now, if I show you the property you like, who's going to write the offer, I or your cousin? Then it dawns on them what you're getting at. I see you're going to do all the work, and then if I go to my cousin and write that offer, that wouldn't be fair. So I guess I'd let you write the offer. I'd believe them, and I'd take them out. But if they do come right out and say, no, I guess I'm going to go to my cousin to write the offer, then you have only one thing to say. Get out of my car. Right there in the middle of the street, don't wait for a stop sign or a stoplight, because you're just really spinning your wheels. I have one important summation here. What does the arbitration panel allow to be brought up at the hearing? Of course, prior decisions by other panels in other matters and any other kind of predetermination should not be allowed. If there is a general rule, it would be that the panel allow anything that would assist it in reaching a fair, equitable, and knowledgeable decision. In other words, the chairman of that panel should not be too quick in declaring something irrelevant. In conclusion, I'd just like you to check with your local real estate news and publications and watch for the date when I will be holding auditions for parts in my new movie, Procuring Cause. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Gardner, and we're going to conclude here with the role of the Grievance Committee in ethics and in arbitration. I hope that you never participate in either one unless you volunteer to be on the Grievance Committee or the Professional Standards Committee. I hope you're not a complainant or a respondent, and hopefully after today you've learned all the rules. Keep in mind that there are two basic areas that the local board enforces. One is the Code of Ethics, looking to see if there's a possible violation for everything that has been filed with the Grievance Committee. And number two, arbitration. Is it an arbitrable issue? Is it something that the Association of Realtors hears? Let's first talk about the role of the Grievance Committee in ethics. Who can file a complaint? Anyone can file a complaint. A member of the public, a realtor. It can be a very short complaint. I saw one the other day that a seller had filed, and it said, I listed my house and she didn't get the job done. And that was it. Or we had a 90-page single space along with a photo album that accompanied that. So as you can see, of course, with as many transactions as we have, that we have a lot of different ways of filing a complaint. Every complaint that is filed must be filed within 180 days when all the facts could have been known with reasonable diligence. So that's the statute of limitations on an ethics complaint. So if you did something 220 days ago, you're okay. Keep in mind that it also is filed against a realtor where they hold membership or where they are members of the multiple listing. It must be filed against a realtor, not against a firm. And it must involve a real estate related transaction, meaning that we don't do alimony, we don't do child support, any of those things. It must be related to real estate. The grievance committee must meet every time that they get a complaint in. Usually our grievance committees meet once a month, some more often. A lot of the local associations would send a copy of the complaint to the broker and to the agent, if that's who's named, and ask to send back to the grievance committee their answer. The grievance committee must be at least 3 members of your association, and they would look at it and determine whether it goes forward to a hearing or not. Keep in mind that about 50% of all ethics complaints have some facts that should go forward to a hearing. About 20% are really tacky, unprofessional actions that unfortunately we do not cover. Another 10% probably involves civil matters. Somebody wants money, somebody's mad because the pool pump doesn't work. A very small percentage may even be criminal matters. We all know in Florida that we have occasionally instances of drugs. People have stolen drugs out of a house. We did have our history-making one time a realtor shot another realtor. And so somebody wanted to file a complaint over a shooting, and unfortunately or fortunately, that's not in the Code of Ethics. But there is a certain small percent that could involve criminal activity, but that is not looked at by the realtor organization. And finally, if you're in property management, that you already know this, is that we have about 10% of the complaints are filed by members of the public who have just too much time, that they want to just file over anything. The grade of the toilet tissue, the fact of the wattage of the light bulbs. So the grievance committee determines if the complaint is going to go forward to a hearing or not. If the complaint is sent forward to professional standards committee, then there would be a panel who would be picked to hear this. The panel would be 3 to 5 realtors to hear the case. Keep in mind, before it goes forward to a hearing, you would know exactly what you were charged with. So let's just pretend that you were charged with an ethics complaint. How would you prepare for this? Well, first of all, you would want to bring all of your notes of what happened. Prior to the hearing, that you would want to contact any witnesses, that you would want to bring any evidence, and you would need to know whether you would want to bring an attorney or not. In an ethics complaint, you could bring a realtor counselor, which is usually your broker, someone who knows about the Code of Ethics. If I'm ever a realtor and I'm charged, I'm going to bring Al Liebert because I think he would make a great realtor counselor. You must tell the association 15 days prior to the hearing if you're going to bring witnesses or an attorney. At the hearing, and the hearing is very formal but very accommodative. It's not like the people's court where people yell and scream at one another. It's very organized. Each party can present their case in any manner in which they choose. They present their witnesses, they present their evidence. And they are allowed to cross-examine one another, and they're asked questions by the parties. After the hearing has concluded, the panel goes into executive session, and you are not allowed to stay if you're a party. It's only the panel members. And they look at what the facts were proven in the case. Was a violation proven? Yes or no? If there was no violation, then there is no finding of a violation. You cannot almost be in violation of the Code of Ethics. But if there is a finding of the violation of the allegation that's made, then the hearing panel will write a findings of fact saying what occurred in the transaction and what you did or did not do that would violate the code. At that time that they're allowed to look at your file to determine whether you've had previous violations and how serious those violations were. And then they determine what will happen: a letter of warning, a letter of reprimand, an education program, a fine up to $5,000, suspension, termination. In addition, most associations do charge a fee if there is a violation for that, in addition to the penalty. The other thing that the associations do is to offer arbitrations. And arbitration is nothing that saying that no one's done anything wrong, except I believe that I was the procuring cause in the sale. It must be filed by a realtor principal, meaning a broker. An agent can join in with the principal, but the agent cannot file on their own. Must be filed within 180 days of closing or when all the facts could have been known. There sometimes is a filing fee for you to pay when you file an arbitration. In most arbitrations, if you win or are the prevailing party, that you get that fee back. If the issue is procuring cause, the transaction must have closed or the lease must have been executed. There are some examples of what is not arbitrated with the association, and that's listing commissions. If the buyer has made a full price offer and they didn't, and the seller didn't take it, that's not arbitrated. If somebody's wanting more money than what they were promised and they were paid. So there are instances where the grievance committee would say that we're not going to arbitrate this. But if it is sent forward to a hearing before professional standards, that they're looking at, was there a contractual issue? Is it between realtor principals? And is it based upon a real estate transaction? The grievance committee, the key is that is the request for arbitration, if taken true on its face, would it be a matter that an award could be given? Also, realtors are given the opportunity to mediate. If they determine that instead of going to arbitration, that they would agree to sit down with a third party, who's usually a realtor, to sit down and try to work it out. Mediation is the best process. Every association must offer mediation, but every realtor can determine if he or she wants to participate. If you agree to participate, come to the mediation with an open mind. Listen to the other side. Determine if you want to make a settlement or if you believe by 150% that you're going to win. If the mediator is good, and most of our mediators are excellent, that they determine that they can work with both sides, let the complainant and the respondent come to a settlement themselves. If they reach a settlement, then the mediation is concluded successfully and there is no arbitration. However, if the mediation is not concluded successfully, then it would go to an arbitration panel. An arbitration panel is to hear all the facts that Al told you and to determine who is the procuring cause of the sale. Keep in mind that the arbitration panel is made up of your peers, of brokers in your area, 3 to 5 brokers here in arbitration. It's up to you to prove by the preponderance of evidence that you were the procuring cause. In most arbitration, there's a prevailing side and there's a non-prevailing side. Very rare does a panel ever award something, a little bit of something to one side or the other. The award is rendered by the panelist after hearing all of the facts in the case. The award simply states who is going to pay whom, the amount of that award, and when it will be paid. keep in mind that the guidelines for the arbitration are found in your Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual. With that, we will conclude the enforcement of the Code of Ethics and the offering of arbitration.
Well, congratulations. You've all just completed our quadrennial ethics training as required by the National Association of Realtors. So we've completed that, but that's just the beginning. Each day as we go on with our job to be and uphold this realtor profession, we keep the code close to us. As we drive into work and we spot that for sale by owner and we stop real quickly to introduce ourselves, we got the code. When we walk into our offices and we bump into a fellow peer, one of our team members, and they have a question and they want us to share our knowledge with them, we got the code. When we go and take those buyers out and show them those properties tomorrow afternoon, we got the code. And when we finally sit across from that cooperating broker at the closing table and end that transaction, we've got the code. It is the cornerstone to our profession. And I'd like you all to help me please thank our helpers, our instructors, Al Liebert, Linda Dix from Tallahassee, and our attorney from FAR, Christy Harrington, and our big support of Miss Carolyn Gardner. And yes, Carolyn, we love our Carolyn Gardner. And we all leave you with, following the code is our promise to protect the public, provides and promotes a competitive marketplace for all of us, enhances the integrity that we have as realtors. It's our promise of our performance, and it's our promise of professionalism. Thank you.